and welcome to the Left Wing. Well, we are back in tour. It's the start of week 4 of the Rugby World Cup. Cian, we're still standing or sitting.
We are indeed. You know, the TV show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I feel like that should apply to tour, because I mean, when we were in Paris at the weekend, there was a noticeable kind of drop in the temperatures. Not on the pitch, mind you, but certainly off it. And I arrived back to tour last night, Sunday.
You had a bit of a nightmare, Cian.
Yeah, we can surely get into that, but the sun is still splitting the stones here. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, coming into this late in the year, we'll definitely take it, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It was like that rain on Thursday and Friday, bit as well in Paris was not good, but it's lovely back here on tour again. So tell us about, so you came down here. I just arrived the last hour. You decided to come down here last night, and
yeah, it wasn't great. I don't know, I mean, anyone who's listening and who's been in France has probably been affected some way by a train strike or trains not running on time. And like, I've been in France plenty of times and thankfully had never been sort of affected by it, but hadn't actually heard that I think there was an electrical fault on what seems like all the train lines in France, certainly into Paris yesterday. But of course, hadn't heard about it before I rocked up to the station for my train that was supposed to leave at 6:30, and it was just absolute chaos at the station. There were thousands of people at the station. It seemed like the fault had been from earlier in the day, so trains had been delayed. We were waiting around for our train, and about half an hour before it left, it just said it was cancelled. So I don't know what that actually means for, like, are we allowed to jump on the next train? Was there another train? So trying to fight our way to get to a ticket desk yesterday, which, let me tell you, was not fun and at times quite actually scary. It was just, I can't tell you how many people there were. We actually ended up, an Ireland player ended up right behind us in the queue, who was also supposed to be on the same train back, and it was just chaos in between him, myself and one of our colleagues who were all trying to get back, between our pidgin French together. We didn't really know what was going on. Thankfully, we eventually got to the top of the queue. Actually, the Ireland player had to duck out of the queue because he had his family with him, and it actually at times wasn't really safe. People were getting kind of antsy and trying to push to the top and stuff. So look, I don't think anything bad happened, but it was just a real sort of eye-opener about what happens when the train line shut down here. But eventually got to the top of the queue, and the woman on the ticket desk didn't really speak any English, and I've been trying my best over here to speak little bits of French, but in an emergency situation, which it felt like at the time, my pidgin French didn't really get me too far, but thankfully there was a guy next to me who was in the same situation with his family, was supposed to be on the same train, so he ended up doing a bit of translating for me. We got put on the next train, but it wasn't until hours later, and then the guy, as a kind of a side story to this, the guy was like, "Oh, you're Irish, blah blah blah." He's like, "Congratulations on the win last night," and was genuinely buzzing and happy for Ireland. And it reminded me of being in New Zealand actually last year, when we were coming through like security after Ireland had beaten the All Blacks. You know, people treat it as if like they hear you're Irish and like they want to congratulate you as if you had any part at all to play in the win. So and I was actually talking to a few supporters who were at the match on Saturday, and they were saying that lots of French people were wearing, like, not necessarily Ireland jerseys, but were wearing green at the stadium on Saturday, which was very interesting considering Ireland still could meet France. So it all just added to the, I suppose, the feel-good nature. But I was glad to get back to tour when I did, even if it meant that I missed most of the rugby, and I had to catch up with it this morning because I had planned a nice evening, get back, watch Scotland, Tonga, watch Wales, Australia. But as I said, as anyone who's been to France knows, plans can quickly derail, pardon the pun, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I had a lovely, relaxing evening with my good friend Ruth Gorman of UTV in Paris last night, and got just about made the train. Didn't have quite the same chaos as you, but just about made the train down to tour here this morning. So
I'm jealous of your nice, relaxing evening in Paris.
Nice.
In hindsight, I should have paid in Paris. Yeah.
But no, it is lovely to be back on tour again. So obviously, down week this week. I am glad there's a down week. I mean, imagine if Ireland were facing into their 4th pool game against Scotland this weekend, as would have happened in other World Cups.
Yeah, and like if it was, I don't think there would have been a huge issue given the sort of the lack of an injury toll that's coming. It seems to be coming out.
After
like
that bruiser,
it's remarkable. We've spoken a lot about the conditioning of the players, and clearly it's standing to them. But also, like, it's a lot about is luck, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, Ireland haven't had luck in previous World Cups. Look, touch wood, it stays like that. There is still time for things to obviously go awry, but the break couldn't come at a better time now, considering that they won. I think think if Ireland had lost, like that's a long 2 weeks. It's a big 2 week build up into a winner bus game against Scotland. So the fact the sun is shining, and I've already been around. I just came back from a run along the river, and I know you've been down there running as well. It's such a beautiful spot, and I was kind of walking back up through the main spot, and I've seen a few of the players and the coaches are around.
Yeah, they can leave, but they have to stay in France,
the country. So for anyone who's like unsure why they're not going home for a breather tournament, World Rugby regulations mean that they can't leave the country. So lots of them are coming back to tour. As I said, I met one of the players last night and his family. I've already seen loads of them around. I'd say they're probably taking advantage of the fact that they probably think loads of the journalists and supporters are gone. But there's a few diehards, Sinead, like the two of us still here. But the fact the weather is so good now is brilliant, because it means they can actually properly get out and explore, which they have been doing in tour. To be fair, they've been knocking around the city, whether it's on bikes. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen that picture of Peter O'Mahony giving Keith Earl-Zabaki on his bike. So they have been getting around, but I think there's obviously more freedom to do that this week. I think the plan is that they are off until kind of Wednesday. They kind of regroup on Wednesday. They'll do media on Thursday and Friday, and then they might have another day off on Saturday, and they kind of come back in on Sunday and start the week as they would any other week. So yeah, like I said, the fact that they won is absolutely huge for so many reasons, but it means that they can actually enjoy the break. I think some of the players and coaches are going off to down the coast, down south. I think some of them are going to La Rochelle. Be nice to get down there for a few days, wouldn't it?
I met so many fans who've been to La Rochelle, even in between the matches as well.
Yeah, I think some of them stayed on in Paris. I think some of them are going to Disneyland. We'll have a piece with Jack Crowley, tomorrow's paper. He said they're trying to get a pass for Craig Casey to go to Disneyland. Craig Casey, unfortunately, seems to be a bit of the kind of the butt of the jokes, but I mean, you can see how, you know, he runs out to the captain's run like pretending to be a mascot with Johnny Sexton. I mean, it's all done in good spirits, and Jack Crowley says they're looking for a few OAP passes for a few of the older lads in the squad as well. So look, the mood is definitely good, and like they've earned, if ever there was a break that was earned, it's after what they achieved on Saturday, isn't it? It was just remarkable.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. I mean, like, still the atmosphere at the game was just unbelievable. I came back to my hotel. I'm staying near the Boulevard de Clichy, yeah, that's right. And the amount of Ireland fans along that strip that the Moulin Rouge is on, there's like 3 Irish pubs there. Hundreds and hundreds. Now, I've never been at a Euros tournament, so to see that was just unbelievable. But I suppose as well, Cian, Zombie really has become such a soundtrack to this World Cup, and you were the first to write an article about it a few weeks ago. You picked that up early, Cian.
I mean, I did, but I'm glad it kind of has kicked off the way it has. I mean, it was unreal in Bordeaux, the first game, wasn't it?
It keeps going up.
Yeah, you know, that's it. I mean, that's because the crowds keep getting bigger. And yeah, it's catching on, and like it goes back to when Munster. I mean, some of the listeners might correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly the first time I remember it being played in kind of a rugby context was at the Aviva last year when Munster lost to Toulouse in the Champions Cup quarter final, wasn't it? So I think they played it after extra time, after full time leading into extra time, and you can still see the video. It's on YouTube. Anyone who was there, I'm sure there's loads of listeners who were there. I was actually over at Welford Road that weekend, so I wasn't there, but anyone who was just said it was just an incredible moment, and Munster obviously have grabbed onto that because it gave the team such a lift, and now the Munster team run out at Thomond Park to the song, and it's incredible. I mean, Cranberries might not be for everyone. I certainly think they're a great band, so many great tunes. It really gets the players going, and so
I think Tadhg Beirne tweeted as well, and just, you know, Zombie, and that was what he tweeted after the game.
It was played down in South Africa when Munster won the URC as well. And like, you think back to what the Limerick hurlers have achieved as well, Sinead, over the last few years, and they've latched on to Dreams, another Cranberries classic as well. So the piece I wrote about a couple of weeks ago, and it's up on independent.ie if anyone wants to read it, is kind of how Cranberries have become the soundtrack of Irish sport.
And you spoke to Barry Murphy.
I spoke to Barry Murphy, like obviously former Ireland Munster centre, who's now in his band Hermitage Green, and he gave a great insight to it as well, kind of on both sides of the coin. So look, like, I think ironically enough, the Cranberries aren't the biggest sports fans, and I've heard Noel Hogan, who was part of the Cranberries, kind of like saying it's funny how it has taken off, but I mean, it must be so like they must be so proud, you know. Unfortunately, Dolores O'Riordan is no longer with us, but as like a proud Limerick band, like they must be unreal to see it. I'm sure they'd probably like a few more royalties to get out of it, because I don't know if it works that way, but it's been brilliant. And I think my understanding is that it wasn't necessarily the IRFU who pushed this to be, you know, Ireland's song in any way. It was actually World Rugby. So I've only been to one non-Ireland game, just the way it's kind of fallen, which was Wales-Fiji, the day after Ireland played in Bordeaux. And straight after Wales beat Fiji, they played Dakota by Stereophonics, and most people probably know that song as well, an absolute banger. Cause
give us a bar to remind us.
No, absolutely not. We'll have to wait for the karaoke bars. All that was the 2019 World Cup. But that's obviously like Stereophonics, big Welsh band, so that goes down so well with the Welsh fans. And actually last night I caught the very end of the Wales game, which was just due to all the travel chaos, and I heard them playing it again. So I'm not sure what other, if they're doing it across the board, I'm sure they are. I'm not sure what other nation songs are, because we just haven't been to the game. Thankfully we didn't get to hear at the weekend what South Africa's song might have been, but it's brilliant. I mean, I think the way they're doing it as well is unreal. They're playing the song, but they're fading down the chorus, which is getting the crowd, and it's just, it's proper spine tingling stuff. I wonder, will it ever become a chant? You know what I mean? This is something I was talking to Barry Murphy about. Like, rugby crowds tend to kind of sometimes need a little bit of a push, and that's why I think it's so brilliant that they fade down the chorus. But part of me wonders if it could in time become a bit like the Fields of Athenroy, where the crowd spark up and sing it, because it's such a brilliant song, and when it reverberates around the stadium, it's unreal. And I've heard people on the street singing it as well. I'm sure there's people back in Dublin in the pubs on Saturday night were probably singing it too.
What stood out to you?
It's brilliant.
I think it's stand out to you, Cian, when you watch the game back?
No, it just doubled down on like everything that we had spoken about kind of after the match, which was a good thing, because I think sometimes when you're at a game and the atmosphere is unbelievable, you can kind of get sidetracked by the game and maybe think that the game was better than what you thought. Now, I have to admit, I never got the sense that that was the case with this game, but I got up early. I could barely sleep on Saturday night, to be honest with you.
The adrenaline was unbelievable.
I just don't know how the players do it, sleep at night after such a late kickoff. But I was absolutely buzzing when I got up in the morning. Couldn't wait to watch it back. It took me about 3 hours to watch it back, because I was constantly rewinding it, going through it, just like, did that actually happen? It was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I've been writing about it in today's Irish Independent, and it's on independent.ie as well. Just the sheer guts and determination around the defence. Look, Simon Easterby has done a brilliant job since he's taken over as defence coach, since Andy Farrell has become head coach. But I thought it had all the hallmarks of an Andy Farrell team. It's like, since he's taken over as head coach, we focus a lot on the attack, and it's been brilliant. But when it comes to Cup Rugby, and I was making this point in the pod after the game, it's all about winning and finding a way to get the job done. And I think we sometimes forget that Andy Farrell was one of, if not the best defence coach in the world before he took over. Like, that is his specialty. So while I said, like, Simon Easterby is doing a brilliant job, you can be sure that Andy Farrell has a massive say in the philosophy. And I just thought the way the players put their bodies on the line, whether it was Gary Ringrose cover tackle on Jesse Creel, whether it was Bundy Aki's tackle on the line on Jesse Creel, whether it was like James Lowe winning a breakdown penalty, whether it was Josh van der Fleer, Caelan Doris counter-rucking. Like, Ian Henderson at the end of the game counter-rucked 3 Springboks off the ball to win an Irish, like, to win a turnover for Ireland. Just 3. Like, it was an unbelievable show of strength. And again, like, not to be harping on about it, but like, so much focus and attention was on South Africa's 7-1 split, and like, I've just mentioned 2 of the subs there, Conor Murray and Ian Henderson, who came on and were just unbelievable. And we were making a point all last week, Sinead, that like, not enough credit is being given to the strength of this Irish bench. So they were the kind of things that stood out to me. I also thought and maybe didn't give him enough credit at the time, was James Lowe. I know he had that moment, which to me was the iconic moment of the game, like driving Etzebeth back, and like Etzebeth got taken off straight after that. Like, that must have been one of the most humbling moments of his career. I mean, like, Rudd spoke about it in the podcast afterwards. He was in the mix zone, did not want to talk. I'm just a pity no one asked him about James Lowe's tackle, although you'd want to be a brave man to ask him about it. But I actually thought again, because we focus on a lot about the attack, because that's the sexy stuff, that's the attractive stuff. And James Lowe, like wingers, you want to see them scoring tries. But I thought that was one of, if not the best game that James Lowe has played for Ireland. I thought his defence, like not just that moment, but he won a turnover, I think it was on Colby, was outstanding, and to me has typified the journey that he's been on. Like, you think back to when he made his debut, he got dropped because of his defence.
That Scotland game, wasn't it? In Edinburgh,
his defence is now a strength. Like, he's playing, like, he's just so much more of a rounded player. And there was loads of interventions that he made, like particularly around the breakdown. Again, not stuff that you necessarily see or take note of because you want to see your wingers scoring tries. His kicking game was very good. So I thought he was excellent as well.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the things that stands out from the fact that they beat the defending World Cup champions is how much Ireland also can improve. The line-outs, I mean, head in hands time when they were losing those line-outs in the opening 12 minutes. So what exactly went wrong there? Because I know they were asked about it in the press conference afterwards, and I think, what did Johnny say? Was it the calls? And then obviously James Ryan came off and Henderson came on, and well, Peter O'Mahony did settle the line-out then as well. What was your reading of what exactly went wrong there?
I think you have to give a lot of credit to South Africa.
The pressure they put.
The pressure that they put on. I mean, Peter Steph Dutoy is basically another lock. Like, and he won so many balls. So, I mean, you can imagine when Roland Keller is standing down the line, as in looking down the line at the height of the Springbok players. Like, it is very tough. Now, it should be better. I'm not giving him a free pass by any means, but like, as we know, like, there are so many things that do go into the line out. Like Johnny Sexton touched on the calls. There is an element of the throw. There were a couple of overthrows. There was a crooked throw. There's the lifts. There's the timing of it. And when you know you're up against a line out defence like that, you are going to be under severe pressure. So, look, it is a concern. We thought it was a concern against Romania, and when Romania are kind of causing you trouble at the line-out.
Well,
like,
in the warm-up, from the warm-ups as well.
Yeah, exactly,
we were talking
but
about
it was much better against Tonga, but again, you saw what Scotland did to Tonga. Like, you're reluctant to maybe read too much into that. Look, I think the fact that Dan Sheehan is back, it wasn't a coincidence. I think that the line-out shored up when he came on. I would fully expect that in the Scotland game in 2 weeks that he's going to be starting. That's no disservice to Ronan Keller, who I thought was outstanding in the game against Romania, and like, he really set the tone early on with that thumping hit on Damien Wilhelmse off the kickoff. So Keller did lots of stuff well. He'll still have a big role to play. But yeah, like, Ireland have a few callers in their system. James Ryan is the main caller. Ian Henderson would be the second main caller. But Tadhg Beirne has started calling line-outs. Peter O'Mahony obviously as well. So there's a lot of IP there when you consider Paul O'Connell is there as well. So I'd say, you know, the coaches are taking a few days off, but I'd imagine someone like Paul O'Connell is going to be like deep in his laptop, like trying to get this right, because one of the most encouraging aspects about it was that, okay, the line out wasn't great, it was better in the second half, but Ireland still found a way to get it done, and that's been a hallmark of this Andy Farrell team. It was a bit like, you know, when everything was going wrong in Murrayfield in the Six Nations earlier this year, they still found a way to get it done. So they got away with it this time. But come the knockout stages, even against Scotland, can't really afford to be coughing up possession like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I know we will have loads of time to talk. Oh my goodness, watch the bumblebee. Okay, it's gone. So just what kind of changes do you imagine they'll make against Scotland? Obviously 2 weeks now, so Scotland play Romania this weekend. They now know what they've got to do, you know, going into the Ireland game. So they need to obviously get, it is Romania, isn't it?
Yeah.
They play Romania, they need that bonus
point. South Africa will play Tonga.
South Africa will play Tonga. So changes in the Ireland team just from this remove, Cian, what do you...
Yeah, like we're so far out that like a lot can change in terms of like fitness and injuries.
And hopefully we'll have Jack Conan.
Yeah, like, so let's take it that all 33 players are fit, which they are as far as we know now. I wouldn't be changing too much, Sinead, I have to say. I would, if Jack Conan is fit, I would certainly be starting Jack Conan, but that would be on the basis that he's able to train from this week into next week with a full week, which he clearly hasn't done. I mean, they've been telling us he's been fit and he's been that, so he would need to have at least a full week's training under his belt, and I think Caelan Doris would be due a well-deserved break. You could easily have Caelan Doris on the bench. A fit Jack Conan against Scotland doesn't necessarily weaken your hand. You think back to how well Conan played when he came on at Murrayfield, when Caelan Doris got injured, so he badly needs a game, and like, you can imagine if Ireland were able to get him up to speed before a potential quarter-final, that would be huge. That adds to the bench strength as well. So I'd be very tempted to get Jack Conan in there if fit. I think Dan Sheehan is almost certain to come in and start with Ronan Kelleher on the bench again. He needs the game time. He looked very good when he came on at the weekend, as we've discussed, but he would need a start. Other than that, I think there could be an argument for Robbie Henshaw for Bundee Aki, purely just to rest Bundee Aki for all the work that he's put in.
He's just been absolutely
He's been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And like I think I touched on this at the weekend. I mean, it's not just against Romania and Tonga. I mean, he went up against Damien Dialende, who's one of the best 12s in the world, and definitely edged that battle, even though Damien Dialende played really well as well. But I would have no problem with Bundee Aki starting as well. I'm just saying that Robbie Henshaw doesn't necessarily weaken the team. He could do with the game time as well. I suppose like Gary Ringrose took a fair bit of punishment in that match. Possibly Henshaw could play 13. But other than that, I don't think I'd be changing too much. I mean, we just heard from Tadhg Beirne there. He's played every minute of Ireland's campaign so far in an attritional position. And now I know he missed a lot of rugby this season with the injury that he picked up in the Six Nations, but maybe they'll look at that. But then again, when guys are in form, I like the approach. I know like we talked about a lot around the Tonga game, should they have made changes, but I kind of like the approach where like they have momentum now, like just like double down, like kind of keep it going. So I wouldn't expect we'll see many changes. I know will there be a temptation to try and get Stuart McCloskey and Jimmy O'Brien game time, because if they don't feature in this, barring
get them on the bench,
barring injuries in the knockout stages, they're unlikely to feature, which would be very tough for them. But I don't think Andy Farrell is going to be sentimental about it either, you know what I mean?
This is not a place for sentiment.
No, exactly. So that would be tough for them though, because Stuart McCloskey certainly played his part over the last year. Jimmy O'Brien did as well. You think back to the South Africa game in November. So for their sake, you would hope that they get game time, but it could be difficult unless there's a couple of injuries.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else stand out for you from the weekend, from the other games before we...
Yeah, I suppose Eddie Jones in Australia, the sinking ship is sinking further, if that's possible. Look, the Wallabies are at rock bottom, aren't they? They were absolutely shocking. As I said, I kind of missed. I was hoping to catch the game in Tour when we got back last night, but all the chaos meant I missed it. But I caught up with it this morning, and they were just awful. I mean, it's sad. It's sad to see an Australian team. It's not good. No. It's not good for World Rugby. It's not good for some like New Zealand Rugby, who are like in the Rugby Championship with them. You need your top teams to be as competitive as possible, and they have gone backwards at a rate of knots under Eddie Jones. I mean, think back to November when the Wallabies played Ireland in November, and Ireland needed a Ross Byrne kick at the end of the game to beat them, and Dave Rennie was pretty hard done.
They should never have got rid of him. See, I don't think. Even at the time, I did not feel it was the right decision.
It became in vogue when Rassie Rasmus and Jacques Nienaber got the job so late in the 2019 cycle and ended up winning the World Cup. I think it almost became in vogue a little bit, because obviously we saw Wales do the same thing, and it's worked for Wales, you'd have to say, but a little bit of a different situation. It is, but it just hasn't worked. Eddie Jones is being linked, strongly linked, you'd have to say, to a move to Japan. I mean, it's just not a good look for anyone. So they were really poor. I suppose on the flip side, absolutely, let's give credit to Wales. Like I said, I was at that Wales-Fiji game, and like I made this point with you guys as well, that Wales didn't get enough credit they deserve. We've seen that Fiji are a good team. Still don't think Wales are world beaters by any means, and I think like obviously they've been benefited by being in the softer half of the draw, but I mean, they're sailing.
Does World Cups though.
He does, yeah, and they do have a strong 15. I think depth is their issue, but you look at that side of the draw, and I know we've spoken so much about it, but it just doubles down on how totally lopsided it is when you look at some of the quality of the teams that are going to get to the quarterfinals. So Wales deserve huge credit. Gareth Anscombe came off the bench, did really well. I think Wales are sweating over Dan Biggar. He's going to be really important, I think, if when they get to the knockout stages, he is their Johnny Sexton. He's the heartbeat of the team, but you consider all the injury hell that Anscombe, like his career was hanging in the balance over the last couple of years. So from a personal perspective, it was great. Our human level, it was great to see him back as well. The Scotland-Tonga game was a bit of a turkey shoot again. Look, that was like, when Scotland are playing against a passive defence like that, they look brilliant, because Finn Russell has time on the ball and their backline is electric. They've made so many improvements, but Tonga have been so poor. I mean, they were really poor against our...
Disappointing.
Really disappointing.
A bit more from them, yeah.
Like, I kind of understood why they were poor against Ireland. It was their first kind of game together in long time playing Tier 1 opposition. But I was hoping that they'd be a bit like Fiji in that after having that game together, even though Fiji have played kind of better quality opposition over the last while, but I thought a game under their belt, they might be a little bit more cohesive, but they were indisciplined, like a couple of really rash tackles, and they were poor. They made Scotland look very good, so I suppose no different that we didn't read a huge amount into the Ireland-Tonga game. I wouldn't read a huge amount into the Scotland-Tonga game either. I don't think Scotland will either. I thought the comments from Gregor Townsend were interesting afterwards. He was a bit prickly about kind of the narrative around, Ireland are already in a quarter-final and they're going to be playing New Zealand. So the siege mentality is clearly already building in the Scottish camp, and why wouldn't it? So they have to go play Romania this weekend, who have been absolutely awful. So that's a guaranteed 5 points. So they'll have a pep in their step going into the Scotland game, or going into the Ireland game in Paris in a couple of weeks. But the week's break, like we've discussed, like that's going to be really important for Ireland as well. So it was a great weekend. Important for us all. Except there's never a day off at the World Cup, Sinead, as proves that we're still sitting here doing podcasts and videos and that. So
okay, lovely stuff, Cian. Thanks for that. Well, Will and Luke will be back with another Left Wing podcast tomorrow, Tuesday, and we'll be back again on Wednesday. Thanks for watching and listening.